Welcome to the Highly Sensitive and Strong podcast. I'm Daphne Lee, a former anxiety sufferer turned holistic anxiety coach, mindfulness teacher, mom, and guide for highly sensitive people. Anxiety was part of my life for as long as I can remember, and as a teenager, I was hospitalized for anxiety, panic disorder, and agoraphobia. Since then, I've learned to transform those challenges into strengths, and now I help people like you calm their nervous systems and live in a way that truly honors you. Each week, I'll share honest conversations, insights, and practical tools to help you heal anxiety in your body and mind so you can thrive as your highly sensitive and strong self. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. If you have been listening to the podcast for a while, you might remember that several months ago I released an episode called Are You a Highly Sensitive Person? Understanding HSP Traits. That was episode 33, and it was meant to begin a foundational series on high sensitivity, and then life shifted. As many of you know, I stepped into a season of caregiving and then grief, and this space naturally followed that path for a while because it felt important to honor what was real and present. But I've been wanting to return here. That HSP 101 episode reached a lot of people, and that tells me that there are still so many sensitive souls quietly wondering, is this why I feel the way I feel? And is this why the world feels so loud, so fast, and so intense? So today we're picking back up where we left off. If you heard episode 33, you might remember the acronym DOES, DOES, which Dr. Elaine Aron uses to describe the core traits of high sensitivity. It stands for depth of processing, overstimulation, emotional responsiveness, and sensitivity to subtleties. And if this is brand new to you, that is completely okay. In simple terms, being highly sensitive means your nervous system processes deeply. It takes in more sensory and emotional information than our non-highly sensitive counterparts, and it responds strongly to both stress and beauty. Today, we're going to explore what that wiring actually looks like in real life, because understanding this trait conceptually is one thing, but learning how to live inside it without burning out or believing something is wrong with you is something else entirely. Let's take one nice deep breath together. Receive a nice deep breath in. And exhale fully. The word sensitivity has carried so much weight for many of us, often shaping the way we have come to see ourselves over time. We're told we are too emotional, too reactive, too intense, or sometimes simply too much. And when those messages are repeated, sometimes directly, sometimes subtly through tone or expectation, they don't just land as thoughts, they begin to organize inside the nervous system. You might notice what happens in your body even as you hear those phrases now. Too sensitive, too much, too intense. Is there a tightening in the chest? Perhaps a tensing of the shoulders, or maybe a subtle urge to shrink. Over time, these repeated experiences become more than just our beliefs, they become protective strategies. The body starts bracing, scanning for signs that you might once again be misunderstood, dismissed, or asked to tone yourself down. That bracing becomes familiar, it becomes automatic, and eventually it becomes a pattern. So let's gently look at a few of the patterns that tend to develop from there. Many highly sensitive people are deeply conscientious. We care about doing things well, we care about the impact we make, and we care about not harming others. And from the outside, these traits can look like excellence. But on the inside, it can feel like pressure that never quite turns off. Perfectionism, especially in sensitive nervous systems, is rarely about our ego. It is often about protection. It's the body trying to secure a sense of belonging. It's saying, if I do everything right, maybe I won't be rejected. If I anticipate every variable, maybe nothing bad will happen. When you process deeply, you naturally see more nuance, more potential outcomes, and more complexity. And without regulation skills, that depth can tip into overfunctioning and then burnout. I know this pattern intimately. There was a time in my life when my sensitivity without support turned into severe anxiety and panic disorder. I was even hospitalized as a teenager because my nervous system was so overwhelmed and I had no language for what was happening inside of me. Looking back, I can see clearly that my system was overloaded, my inner dialogue was really harsh, and I did not yet know how to care for my particular sensitive wiring. And that distinction changes everything. Another common struggle is emotional absorption. You walk into a room and feel the tension before anyone speaks. You notice a subtle shift in someone's tone, and then your stomach tightens. Or you feel sadness in your body when someone else is hurting, almost as if their emotion has crossed an invisible boundary and settled inside you. This is attunement. It's your nervous system doing what it does well, which is tracking the emotional field around you, scanning for cues, registering shifts that others may not even consciously perceive. But without differentiation, attunement slowly turns into exhaustion. So if you grew up in an environment where you had to be aware of others' moods in order to stay safe or to stay connected, your system may have learned to track everyone else before it ever checked in with yourself. It becomes automatic. Many sensitive people were never taught how to pause and gently inquire, is this mine? Or am I picking up something around me? And so we end up carrying what is not ours to carry. We carry the unspoken stress in the room or the disappointment that was never named. We carry the subtle irritation in someone's voice and then wonder why we are suddenly depleted. Over time, that accumulation narrows our capacity. The nervous system begins to feel chronically full, like there's no space left to metabolize what is actually ours. And when the system is full, even small things can feel overwhelming. So, learning differentiation does not mean hardening your heart. It means allowing your empathy to remain intact while also protecting your nervous system from unnecessary overload. And when your nervous system has learned to track the emotional field around you so closely, something else often develops alongside that, which is a strong desire to keep the field calm. If harmony feels like safety and tension feels destabilizing, you may find yourself over accommodating for others without even realizing it, saying yes when your body is tightening and saying no, or softening your own preferences before anyone else has the chance to challenge them. Trying often unconsciously to manage other people's reactions so that the atmosphere stays steady, is less about manipulation and more about protection. For many highly sensitive children, emotional disconnection didn't feel small, it felt overwhelming. So the nervous system adapted to keep the peace, to stay agreeable, and to not rock the boat. And over time, that adaptation becomes your identity. You might think, oh, I'm just easygoing, or I don't mind, it's fine, whatever the other person wants. And this can be true even when your body is tired and even when resentment quietly begins to build because you're taking on too much. Because if your system equates conflict with rupture and rupture with danger, then avoiding that makes sense. But constantly organizing yourself around other people's comfort slowly erodes your own capacity, and the cost of that erosion is exhaustion. Learning boundaries for a highly sensitive person is not about becoming rigid. It's about allowing your nervous system to remain open without overextending itself. Depth of processing is one of the core traits of high sensitivity. You think deeply, you reflect, you consider multiple angles before making a decision, you notice nuances that others might miss. That depth is a strength, but under stress, that same depth can turn inward in ways that become exhausting. The mind loops. It replays conversations long after they have ended. It analyzes tone, facial expression, and word choices, and it tries to solve for certainty. Because for a highly sensitive nervous system, uncertainty often feels unsafe. If you grew up feeling misunderstood, criticized, or like you had to explain yourself often, your inner critic may have formed as a kind of early warning system, thinking things like, if I catch the mistake first, it'll hurt less. If I improve myself first, maybe I won't be rejected. At some point, that inner voice may have actually felt protective. But over time, constant self evaluation narrows your capacity. You might notice what happens in your body when the inner critic gets loud. Often, you'll notice things like the chest or the belly tighten, the breath becomes shallow, the shoulders lift, the mind speeds up. Shame constricts the nervous system. And self attack does not create growth, it creates bracing. And when the system is bracing, it's using energy and it can't integrate insight in a really healthy way. So, what many highly sensitive people need is not more self correction, they need more safety. They need the experience of being able to make a mistake without losing their sense of belonging. They need the experience of being imperfect and still staying connected. When depth of processing is supported by safety, it becomes wisdom. When it's fueled by fear, it becomes rumination. So the wiring doesn't change, but the environment around the wiring does. Now, research consistently shows that highly sensitive people are more impacted by negative environments. If you grow up in chaos, harshness, unpredictability, or chronic stress, your nervous system feels it deeply. You may have developed anxiety, shame, hypervigilance, or a strong need to control your surroundings simply to feel stable. And for many highly sensitive people, that becomes part of the story of your identity. You might believe, I'm just an anxious person. I'm fragile. I can't handle things the way other people can. But here is what is equally important and often not emphasized enough. The same nervous system that absorbs stress deeply also absorbs support deeply. This is called differential susceptibility. It means, yes, you are more affected by your environment, but that also includes positive environments. When you are in relationships that feel safe and attuned, your system settles more fully. When you're in spaces that are nourishing, spacious, and respectful, your creativity expands. When you're supported, you do not just improve a little bit, you flourish. This is not fragility, this is responsiveness. And responsiveness is powerful when you understand it. It means that shaping your environment is not just a luxury, it's an important part of your regulation. It means that choosing the relationships that you're in, the media you consume, your daily pace, and your community very intentionally is not indulgent, it's protective. So if you've struggled in the past, it's not because you're broken. It's not because something's wrong with you. It may have been because your system was trying to survive in conditions that were not supportive of your wiring. When a highly sensitive nervous system is chronically overstimulated or unsupported, it contracts. But when it's resourced and understood, it expands. So again, the wiring doesn't change, just the conditions do. And in the right conditions, sensitivity becomes a wonderful strength. So, after hearing all of that, it might sound like being highly sensitive is primarily about struggle. And if that's where your mind goes, that makes sense because when sensitivity is unsupported, it often does feel heavy. But what I want you to really feel in your body and not just understand intellectually is that the very traits that create difficulty in unsupported environments are the same traits that create profound strength in regulated ones. Nothing new has to be added, there's no missing piece. What changes is the level of safety and support around the wiring of your nervous system. When the nervous system feels resourced instead of braced, the same depth, the same attunement, the same responsiveness begins to express itself differently. And that is where we begin to see real strength. This is where depth of processing becomes insight. Emotional responsiveness becomes compassion. Sensitivity to subtleties becomes pattern recognition. When you process deeply, you're not just overthinking, you're noticing connections, you're perceiving patterns across time. When you feel deeply, you're capable of profound empathy, of sitting with someone else's pain without turning away. And when you notice subtleties, you're perceptive. You see what is shifting beneath the surface. Highly sensitive people are often meaning makers, meaning that we don't just skim life, we metabolize it. We ask deeper questions about purpose and alignment. We long for authenticity and deep connection. And we feel misalignment quickly, sometimes before we can explain why. And so, when we've done our own healing work, when we've learned to regulate our nervous system and tend to our inner world, that depth becomes very stabilizing for others. It creates presence, steadiness, and a kind of grounded attunement that other people feel safe around. I often think about how terrified I once was to speak in front of people. Even being called on in school could make my mind go blank and my body flood with adrenaline. Later, when yoga transformed my life and I felt called to teach, that meant standing in front of groups. And my nervous system resisted really fiercely. Every protective strategy came online. But something shifted when I reframed the belief. It stopped being about whether I was good enough and it became about whether I could be of service to others. That shift didn't eliminate my fear, but it changed my relationship to it. And slowly, my system expanded. Not because I bulldozed fear or I forced confidence, but because I widened my capacity. And that is how growth tends to look for highly sensitive nervous systems. It's incremental and it is embodied, which makes it very sustainable. So, if you are highly sensitive, chances are you carry some old beliefs. Things like, I'm too much or I'm not enough. Life is difficult. I'm weak. I'm fragile. Those beliefs rarely formed in isolation. They formed in response to environments, to feedback, to moments when your nervous system was trying to make sense of belonging. Before you attempt to rewrite those beliefs on a cognitive level, I want to invite you to do something different. Notice your body first. Because if your nervous system is activated, no amount of reframing will truly land. The brain can't integrate new beliefs while it's still bracing. So the practice becomes layered. First, you notice the thought, not to judge it or fix it, but just to notice it. Then notice the state of your body. Is your jaw tight? Are your shoulders lifted? Has the breathing become shallow or held? And then allow yourself to regulate, even 5%. Lengthen the exhale slightly. Feel your feet on the ground. Allow your shoulders to drop a little. Give your nervous system a signal that you are safe enough in this moment. And only then, when there's a little more space, introduce a new believable thought. So instead of, I always fail, perhaps it becomes, I am practicing becoming someone who follows through. Or if you're going through a season where you're feeling like, I hate my body, perhaps that becomes, I am learning how to care for my body. Our beliefs shape behavior, but safety is what allows those beliefs to shift. Highly sensitive nervous systems do not respond well to force. They respond to steadiness, compassion, and consistency over time. So if you recognized yourself in today's episode, I want you to hear this and maybe even let it really land in your body. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You are deeply tuned in, and that tuning requires care. It requires boundaries and an environment that supports you. It requires practices that help your nervous system feel steady rather than constantly braced. In our next episode, we're going to talk specifically about boundaries because protecting your energy without hardening your heart is essential for highly sensitive people who want to remain open and connected without burning out. If this conversation resonated, please consider sharing it with someone who might also be wondering why life feels so intense for them. Sometimes having language around something can really change our experience. And as always, be gentle with yourself. Your sensitivity is not a flaw, it is wiring. And when that wiring is supported, it becomes wisdom, leadership, and strength. I'll see you next time.